everyone, and welcome to the Jeff Bullish Show. Today I have with me Nick Fogle. Now, Nick went from being an attorney drowning in student loan debt to teaching himself to code, building a successful software as a service business. We sometimes use the term acronym SaaS, and oddly getting acquired for a mid-seven-figure sum in 2021. After graduating with a job in a deep recession in 2008, he made a bad situation worse by taking a student loan and going to law school. He quickly built up a debt of $250,000 and realized he couldn't pay the debt down. Desperate to get out from the mountain of debt, he decided the best way to pay it off was to start his own company. And this could have gone pear-shaped or it could have gone well. And apparently it went very well. Nick couldn't find a technical co-founder to help with the startup idea, so he drove a shuttle bus for minimum wage while teaching himself to code. This sounds a little bit like a side hustle while driving a shuttle bus, doesn't it really? Then Nick worked his way up the ranks from low intern to lead engineer at a publicly traded software company. For 5 years, he spent every night, weekend, even used his PTO to work on his startup Wavve, which we're going to find out what that was. In 2020, he's finally able to pay off his student loan debt and leave his day job. After selling Wavve for a mid-seven-figure sum in 2021, he took everything he'd learned about retention and turned it into a new business, Churnkey. And we're going to find out about what Churnkey does, and we're going to find out what his business Wavve did. So welcome to the show, Nick. It's an absolute joy to have you here, dialing in from the USA. I'm dialing in here from Sydney, Australia, which some people have heard of and some haven't, but we're a long way from anywhere over here, but that's okay. We've got Zoom to fix that problem. So, Nick, tell us about was there a drive to become an entrepreneur, or you sort of fell into it? But really, for me, it almost sounds like you became an entrepreneur because of a cash flow problem and trying to solve a problem, as in being under this mountain of debt. So there's different ways to start a business to be motivated, isn't there?
Yeah, sure is. And first of all, thanks for having me, Jeff. Really excited to dive into this discussion here. Yeah, it's funny. Motivation is a fickle thing. And sometimes you have this intrinsic drive. And then at other times you have this feeling like you're being crushed, like I've got to do something about it. And, you do the right things. You go through life, people say, hey, if you want to be a success, you need to check these boxes. You need to go to university, then maybe become a doctor or become a lawyer, and like you'll make all this money. And money always sounded good. Hey, I'm going to be a successful, fully functioning adult one day, and be a lawyer. It's going to be fun. It's going to be like a Law and Order episode. I had this vision of what I thought that would be like. So I finished law school and become an attorney, and I quickly realized you don't make the kind of money, particularly starting out, you don't make the kind of money that you need to pay down that student debt. And I was at a point in life where I said, do I really want to be a lawyer? I wasn't really enjoying the work that I was doing. The pay wasn't particularly great. And these student loans were accruing interest at a rate of $50 per day. So it was like every day just to pay the interest, I had $50, and I couldn't even pay that. And so I was like, how on earth will I go to my grave with this debt? How will I ever pay it down? And I did a lot of thinking and trying to figure out, well, what kind of job could help me to pay this down? And I looked at it as, well, there are only a few jobs in the world that could help me do this. I don't want to go back to school and do something else. I need to either be in sales, which at that time I had no interest in doing sales. Sales is a role where you could have just uncapped potential, or I could start a business and own that thing, and then have some kind of exit, or have more control over my income. So that was the internal dialogue that I had. And my wife at the time, we were recently married, and she was like, "Are you kidding me? Like, you're not going to be an attorney?" Everybody thought I was crazy here. They say, your parents must be so embarrassed that you're going. I had a lady tell me that, like, your parents got to be so embarrassed that you went to law school. You're not practicing as an attorney anymore. So on its face, it seemed like a silly decision. To me, it didn't. It seemed like the only logical thing to do.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that the expectation of culture family, parents for you to do a proper job. I left, I did a teaching degree, and I did it in a time where the government paid for university and college, um, which is a novel idea today, but I think countries are rich enough to pay for that today, really. But that's another topic on its own.
Oh yeah,
That's,
you'll get me fired up talking about at least the American education system, because the government is in a way paying for it by backing these loans, and there's no incentive for institutions to cut costs when you've got loans that are backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government.
yeah. So we won't open that can of worms because but I do like the fact that I had free education, and so I'm very, very grateful and very thankful. So yeah, and I left teaching after about 5 or 6 years because I hated it, and got into the technology industry and loved it, and been playing there pretty well ever since. So yeah, but parents sort of see their children as doing, the normal society, things, engineer, nurse, doctor, teacher, whatever. So, and there's a lot of people actually leaving university, not even going to university, but becoming a tradie. In other words, and they're becoming a new rich almost, aren't they? Whatever rates they're getting paid today. So,
Yeah,
and the great thing about a tradie is he can't be replaced by AI, really, can he? Or her?
that's a good point. At least not yet.
Not yet. Okay, so you're quite motivated by a huge mountain of debt, and you're going, okay, I've got to work my ass off. So you started. So where did the idea for was Wavve the first thing you started? Is that right?
No, it was not. I mean, it would be. I don't think I would have any room to talk if the first thing I created just happened to be successful. I think part of being successful as an entrepreneur is having some early failures and some big failures where you've sunk either capital or time or tremendous effort to something that doesn't pay off. Like that's really how you learn and develop that muscle of perseverance.
Yes.
So yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So what were the sort of little first failures? What happened?
Yeah, so I was working a day job because I had to pay the dues as a software engineer, and funny thing enough, the software engineering, it turned out to pay better than the legal
Yeah.
degree I had, or the lawyer job. So it was like, okay, well, I'm doing a little bit better now. This was about 3 years out of law school, and I'd been wanting to start my own thing. I'm still chasing the entrepreneurial passion. The first thing I started, if you really want to go to the first startup, it was an embarrassing failure where I realized that without any kind of capital or any connections, it's very naive to just say, "Oh, I think I can find a software engineer to like help me build this. I'll give them some equity." And I couldn't find anybody that's going to do that, like build this thing with no income for free. So I just start working, and I'm working, making little side projects, little side technology businesses all along, and never really find anything that has that kind of market appeal or opportunity. But in 2016, I met my co-founder. It ended up being my co-founder at Wavve, but we had this thought that it's fun to talk about sports with your friends. And this is a very common thing. Everybody wants to, after a game or during a game, be able to talk in real time, but also having something that's somewhat asynchronous. So like being able to have a group and you can all leave your feedback there. Audio is best in its native format rather than having to type something on Twitter or just text it. So having a real conversation, it seemed like this big opportunity. And this was 2015 when we started this. We called it You Talk Sports, which bad name. We got like a cease and desist order pretty quickly. Should have known from law school, right? Like, maybe I should do a trademark search here. But anyway, we spent about 18 months grinding. I built out this whole platform. It had a mobile app, Apple, iOS app, an Android app. It's kind of like this field of dreams mentality of like, if I build it and if we build this really appealing thing that we think is valuable, people are going to just give us money hand over fist, or venture capitalists are going to come in and say, this is a great thing. Here's some money to keep building it out. And that didn't pan out. So we struggled to commercialize it. We also struggled to grow a big enough audience to actually get venture money. So we were about 18 months in and we were about to throw in the towel on this business. So yeah, it's kind of a lot.
Are you building this as a side hustle? while you were still
Yes.
working at
So that
as working in engineering, programming, and software for a company?
exactly. Yeah, I was at a company called Blackbaud here in the US. It's a large publicly traded tech company, and I was traveling. I was going off, flying, different countries, doing implementations, and it's a really busy job. And every little bit of margin I had, even like using, as you mentioned, using some PTO time to actually work on building this out because I needed all the time I could have. So a lot of late nights and weekends, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears just building this. And we got to the 18-month mark, and it was clear that I couldn't put forth any more effort. I didn't want to, because if this wasn't going to be a viable business, it wasn't just a fun hobby. I mean, it's fun to build things, but not to that extent. So as kind of a last ditch Hail Mary, still working the day job, figuring we've got to find a way to get more eyes onto this thing that we built. The problem we uncovered at this time, though, was that audio doesn't share well. So we tried to share audio snippets from the communities that we built. We had all these different sports channels, people with different teams. We had a lot of activity, but there was no viral loop in it. And you hear a lot about virality. You used to hear about this, more before people were focused on building profitable businesses. Thought all you needed was a viral loop. We still thought that at the time, but I said, okay, well, let's find a way to share this audio in a better format. This was right about the time that video as a medium was really picking up. And now, video, TikTok, it's the only medium that people are consuming, it seems. But back then it was just starting to pick up. So maybe there's a way we could start taking all of this great audio, these great sound bites here, and just share them on social. So we created a tool. I pulled an all-nighter, built this thing out, literally a all-nighter, to build a way to take an audio file, you upload it MP3. You have some artwork. If you're a podcast, you throw your cover art there. And we had all these different designs where we could animate an interactive waveform. So all sorts of cool, engaging ways to turn that audio into a video. And the system did that. It was very manual. We would have to manually, rather my co-founder was manually having to create these. A customer would say, "Oh, I loved what you guys created. Can I pay you to make some of these for me?" We were still, by the way, trying to sell this whole behemoth that we created. And
so this audio you were turning into an animation. Is that right?
It was a full video file. So it'd be give us MP3 and we'll spit out this really nice, engaging, interactive waveform on your cover art, a native video. People have seen these before. The term is called an audiogram.
Right.
And they're becoming less popular these days because people are preferring just a full-on video. But they still do pretty well. It's better than just, having text files, for instance. But this was the first way we kind of commercialized that concept of an audiogram. We were the first ones to do that. And we learned a lot about building a business in the process, doing things that don't scale, trying to just brute force this business into being successful. And a key ingredient of that was early on, we're doing these things that don't scale, and that somebody would message us, say, "Hey, I really want that thing you have. I'm willing to pay." And that was new to us. We have people actually wanting to give us money for something. They don't want this whole beautiful platform we've created. They just want the simple video. It's a simple problem and a solution that we had. So we were manually creating these for people using the system we had. And we got along. I think we got a decent amount of revenue, and it was recurring revenue too. So it was like a monthly subscription. You'd have this, all these files and templates and things like that you could use, and you could come back and upload your audio when you needed to. So that was kind of the basic origins of what would become Wavve.
Right. Okay. So when did you really get traction? Was it from that time where people started paying you for creating them and you put that on subscription? Is that how it worked?
Yeah. I mean, that was a very early form of traction, and some just very basic product market fit that we hadn't seen before, where we're not having to reach out and try to sell this big platform to radio shows or podcasters or anything like that. It was people coming to us inbound and saying, "Hey, we want that." So that was step one.
Yep.
And seeing that there was a small opportunity here, and we thought it was going to be very niche. And I was so skeptical of building anything else at this point. I was like, let's just, use this revenue. We can maybe make a little bit of extra money, and we can keep working on the platform. So we kept the platform thing going for about 6 months until we were getting so much revenue from Wavve that we were like, this is the thing.
So you moved it to subscription model instead of project by project model? Is that what you did?
It was a subscription model from the beginning.
From the beginning. Okay.
Yeah. So, and the manual thing was like, hey, if somebody's going to ask us to set this up and we're going to charge them, I think it was only $12 a month or something. So it was like a nominal fee for the amount of work that went into setting up. So we had to make sure that there was some subscription revenue. And to be fair, like, we were hosting the files for them. There was a lot of, ongoing cost to it as well. But I would say that was like step one in understanding we had an opportunity. And there came a point though where it was like, are we going to double down on this or just keep treating it like a little hobbyist project?
Yeah.
And this is when we really started to think about scale. So I was telling you before we started recording here that my business partner went on vacation, and he had been the one that was manually handling all of these, and I was handling most of the tech and the actual behind the scenes work. And when he left, I'm having to do all this work. And I said, I cannot do another one of these. We're going to automate it. And when I created the ability to design your own, it really opened up the floodgates where suddenly people were like, oh, wow, like I can do this really quickly. There's not this 1 day turnaround time. People started sharing it more. And one little hack we were still thinking through like, virality and like, how do we get more eyes on this? We had a little watermark on the free tier. So like, yeah, you could come now, since we're not having to do the work, you can design your own, you can be on a free tier, but every video you're going to have a time limit and it's going to have a watermark. And that was really instrumental to getting more eyes on it. So somebody would share, we'd have like the Dave Ramsey show started using it. And they have so many people on the Instagram feed watching it. Suddenly we had all of these people that had seen, or other podcasters that had seen the little Wavve watermark, and they come to our website. So we really started to take off at that point. And then COVID came along, and suddenly everybody was creating a podcast, if you recall. I mean, yes. Everybody, a lot of people didn't have any business creating a podcast. And that was good for the business because we had this huge tailwind of creators that wanted to have this visual collateral for their audio.
Yeah. So what happens for you to exit? So you got some big attention through a bigger show. And then that obviously would have been a bump in revenue, and then you would have become attractive for acquisition. And then someone approached you, or did you go to market?
That's a great question. There were a few different moments, and I've realized now this is pretty common when you start a business. There are a lot of different firms that are out there. Some of these are private equity. Some of these are individuals, and they just want to have a cash flowing asset. And that might be it might be a small brick and mortar business, might be a vacation rental, or it might be a software company. The first instance we had where there was any kind of acquisition thought was Spotify came to us back in like 2019.
Wow.
I don't think they knew how early we were or how small we were, because the conversation ended pretty quickly, but it just got our wheels turning like, oh, wow, this thing that we built, there is long-term exit potential and maybe $1 on our ownership in the company, $1 value. So that's when we started getting intentional about building something that we could potentially exit one day. So we met with a business broker in 2020, and I think the business was we might have been doing $500,000 a year at that point in recurring revenue. And the business brokers, they serve an important function, but they take a huge cut of any transaction fee. Yeah. It's going to be like 10 or 15% of the overall sale price, that's huge, a huge amount. If you were like a early stakeholder in a startup, you might own that much of the company. So we figured we might move to market with a broker at some point in the future. And we were starting to tweak the business in ways. And I think another thing that's valuable for meeting with the professionals who sell anything is understanding what is the market value in this asset, be it a house or a business. We realized there were some flaws with the business that we needed to address. Right. One of the biggest flaws we had was churn. As you can imagine, with podcasting, you have a lot of people who have this idea, I want to start a podcast, but podcasting is hard. It requires a lot of ongoing work, editing, guests. I mean, I'm preaching to the choir here. It is a big commitment. And a lot of the people that would use Wavve, they'd sign up, they just started a new podcast, and we called it pod fade. I don't know if that's like an industry term or not.
Okay.
But they would, after 2 or 3 months, they would churn out of our product because the podcast, they were like, oh, I'm taking a break from podcasting, or I've decided I'm not going to create the podcast anymore. And that churn was like 15% a month of our whole customer base that would churn out. And it's like, well, if we want to grow, we've got to replace that whole 15% by growing faster. So we found that when meeting with these business brokers who were helping us understand valuation multiples and how and the things that make a business more attractive, churn is a very important part of that.
Mm.
So we spent a year working on churn and figuring out, okay, well, what are some ways that we can reduce churn? Our first mistake was spending a fortune on consultants. We figured, oh yeah, we'll just hire like the experts. They'll come in, they'll tell us what to do, and they'll just fix it. And oftentimes when you get consultants, it doesn't always pan out that way. So after a few months and a lot of money spent, we kind of went back to the drawing board because we weren't seeing the early indicators that churn rate was reduced. And we started working on our platform and our product, and we came up with some techniques that helped us over the next year to cut our churn in half.
Right.
So by the time we reached that point, it was late 2020. We were like, okay, the business is healthy. Profits are great. We've doubled or maybe even tripled at that point. And we said, let's call this broker up. And so we called the broker and they're like, all right, great. Well, early 2021, let's meet up again and we'll list you and we'll do everything. Well, crazy thing happened. So, and it's weird how things happen in life, but within a span of about a week, we had 4 or 5 inbounds from potential acquirers, just randomly, like different ones. And maybe it was a function of the timing. There was a lot of capital flowing around and people were looking after COVID, and stimulus and everything. A lot of people were looking to make investments. They hadn't made investments or acquisitions in the year leading up to that. So everybody at the end of the year was looking, all right, where can we allocate capital? And we had a bunch of conversations and we found the best offer from the best potential partner to partner for the future of Wavve, because you build something, you don't want to just throw it to the highest bidder. You want to find the right fit who's going to take care of your baby, your thing you built.
Yeah.
So we did. And it saved us a lot of money by not having to use a broker. So we were very fortunate with the timing in a lot of different ways. It really helped us to kind of maximize that valuation and then the proceeds from the sale as well.
Cool. Selling a business can be great, but then quite often there's a thing called golden handcuffs. In other words, you have to work in the business for the next 3 to 4 years. Did that happen?
It did not. Yeah, and that was an important part of finding the right acquirer, because some acquirers, they want, and it's usually more a strategic acquisition. Like if it had been like a big company that wanted to bring us on, they might require that. We had automated a lot for this business, so it helped us to be able to just kind of say, hey, we're going to do a 90-day transition period where we're still here, we're available, we're going to help you onboard and transition all the tech to you and your team. But that was really important to us because we were ready for a change. We'd been working in the audio and podcasting and media space for about 5 years or 6 years at that point, and we were ready to move on to something different. So it was important to us to negotiate that and make sure that wasn't part of the expectation there.
Yeah, and I've had conversations with multiple friends who've one hasn't exited because they wanted 4 to 5 years. One had enough clout to go, okay, you pay me this cash, and I'm not staying on. And so yeah, it's very, very important. Otherwise, you end up working in a business where you're not in the driver's seat anymore. I can imagine it would be very frustrating to have those golden handcuffs. So well done. That's fantastic. Now, this is where we pivot to your next business, because it sounds like you've obviously seen issues with churn.
Yeah.
Right. So Churnkey, which is your new business, is about maximizing subscription businesses. So I'm imagining that the idea came out of the problems you had with your own churn, and that's why you created it. Is that the reason behind coming up with a new
Yes,
business idea?
that's it. That's exactly right. And this is kind of my thesis that's been evolving over the last decade in entrepreneurship.
Yes.
It's really around proximity to a problem or an industry is probably the best way to find an idea that you can commercialize and bring to market in a big way. And, with the first example, we were really proximate to creators, people in audio, and we found this small, seemingly niche problem at first, the problem being that audio doesn't share well. And we started very laser focused. After the previous failure, we were laser focused on this small problem and grew that into something that could be a viable business. With Churnkey, it was pretty cool because we weren't just like looking for ideas for the next business. We were very keen on solving this problem for other businesses that we just solved for ourselves. We knew that we call it subscription fatigue. Every listener and you are aware of this idea that you have so many subscriptions at any given time now. Everything is moved to a subscription model that consumers, they want flexibility. You want the ability to maybe pause a subscription. Sometimes circumstances change, like during COVID, there's a lot of price sensitivity. People need discounts and they have cash flow constraints. And what we realized at Wavve and what we've furthered with Churnkey was there's this big gap in subscription transactions. So there's this idea that, well, businesses don't ever want to lose a customer if that customer is still even the least bit profitable for the business. And customers don't always want to cancel a subscription, but there are other things that mitigating circumstances that could force them into that. So we kind of create this really great middle ground for both end users and the businesses. It's a win-win that otherwise wouldn't happen without some of the techniques and things we have in place.
Right.
So yeah, that whole arc of we're in the thick of this problem churn and our business is being crushed by it to, okay, we've solved this for our business. Is this applicable to other businesses? And we talked to other businesses and they said, yes, gosh, my churn is so high. If I could just solve this, like we would be able to grow to our targets. And we realized, okay, like this is our next thing. So literally the month that we closed that transaction to sell Wavve, we launched Churnkey publicly and made it available to other businesses.
Right. So, and this is what's often the key behind any successful startup or any business is solving a problem.
Yeah.
So you've identified a problem within your own business and then you've turned it into a new business, which is Churnkey. And what's the URL for that? Churnkey.com?
.co. Working on the .com.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So what does Churnkey do? Give us a thumbnail sketch, because what is great about Churnkey from what you're talking about is that almost every business now is trying to work out a subscription model because one, it is seen as more valuable for acquisition. And now we're even, so basically it's a $20 a month newsletter or a $20 a month software as a service provider for a company. And we're now seeing it even creeping into the retail area with, I think you mentioned Wendy's are selling slushies under subscription model. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it was a gas station, like a convenience shop. And you see it everywhere though. I mean, you really do. I mean, car washes have all moved to subscription revenue. I got off a call a few months back with a waxing franchise. They do waxing and cosmetic stuff, and you can have a subscription to that. I mean, gyms are a good example. They've been around forever. We have mostly focused on software, although we do serve some brick and mortar subscription businesses. And the change over the last 20 or 30 years that is moving a lot of things to the subscription model is that companies used to have to charge a much larger upfront fee to say, oh, well, if you want this software, we've got to take care of all of the cost at once. And now businesses can say, oh, well, we can continue to improve the software rather than delivering it as like a one-time, download. We can continue to improve it over time. You're going to pay us like a maintenance fee, and you're also able to get it for a cheaper price. Now, in some situations, the subscription economy has gotten a little out of control when you have slushies that it's like, hey, yeah, do our membership, save 10 cents a month. But there is a very real reason for both businesses and consumers for where this model really does work.
Yeah. Okay, so give us an idea how Churnkey works in
Yeah,
terms of how you reduce churn, maximize revenue.
I'll give you the 30-second introduction to like what is churn. We like to think of churn in two different ways. One is voluntary churn, where somebody says, "Oh, I don't want this anymore. I'm going to go cancel it," and they click that dreaded cancel button on the website.
Mhm.
The other is involuntary churn, which is increasing across the board right now because of new payment standards and things like that, where cards are
Yes.
failing at very high rates. And then oftentimes these people, end users, customers, they don't actually want to churn. It's just like a card update that needs to
Yeah.
happen. And most people have received the emails before, but it's an issue with procrastination. It's like, oh, I'll get back to that. And then your subscription is automatically canceled. There's this whole hassle. Like, do I go back and update it? There's like a collections component to it. So it's inefficient. So we actually solve all kinds of churn for customers. So we look at voluntary churn. And for voluntary churn, that again, that's somebody clicks the cancel button. What happens? Well, we help to facilitate a better middle ground between the business and the customer. So again, a customer does not want to lose, or a business does not want to lose a customer. They're willing to help you out, give you some flexibility. Maybe you want to pause your subscription because you're not using it right now. Maybe you do need a discount. Maybe you need contact support. Like there are a lot of different types of offers that we can help facilitate on behalf of the business so that we're able to meet the customer in the middle. So we have this flow, we call it an offboarding flow. Somebody selects why they're canceling. And we have some intelligent offers that are served up based on who that customer is and what is most likely to save them from canceling.
Right.
So that's one part of it. And then on the failed payment side, we have some really sophisticated models we've developed around running cards at the right time to make sure that they go through successfully, and then having really well-written, personalized campaigns that are segmented that get customers' attention and help them to take action really quickly on things like card updates. If a card is failing and it's expired or it's not going to be updated otherwise, then you'll have an email campaign that can go out.
Yeah. Fascinating. And the other thing that's interesting too is quite often, especially with you go to cancel a subscription, sometimes a challenge is because, like you said, there's two types of problems with churn. One's intentional and the other is accidental. The intentional one is where you're going, I am leaving, I don't want this anymore. The other one is accidental, which is the payment side typically. So, but the interesting thing is that for you as the person paying the subscription, whether you're a business, is what are all these subscriptions I'm paying for and how do I actually cancel them because I'm not using them anymore? And there was someone who's actually had a software that identified that within larger enterprise where they identified savings of like $1 to $2 million a year of subscriptions to software that the company wasn't using. So that's one.
Yeah.
In other words, one of the best things that happened to me was one of the card I was using for paying for subscriptions actually basically expired. And I think I saved myself about $2,000 a month. So it was fantastic. So, but subscriptions. So what's your target market for Churnkey? Is it larger enterprise? Is it small? Is it newsletters? Is it software as a service? What is your, I suppose, sweet spot for Churnkey?
It's evolving, and as with any business, your ideal customers can change over time. And when we started out, we were looking for customers to look like us, like other businesses that had similar attributes, similar volume, relatively small SMB style. And I think we quickly realized while we had a lot of success helping those businesses, we saw that there was a lot more upside to be had by moving to mid-market and enterprise and serving larger, higher volume businesses. Yep. And over time, our focus has transitioned. We still do have a really solid book of business from SMBs and software businesses, but we're moving into different areas. And I think that's where there's a lot of interest in me. My background before law school was behavioral economics. And that's the thing I love about this offboarding experience, where we can intercept cancellation intent and we can leave both parties happier. Customers happier, they have a better arrangement that works for them. Business is happy. because they haven't lost that customer that they otherwise would have lost were it not for Churnkey. And we've saved, sometimes we'll have people ask us like, isn't this a dark pattern? Isn't this, a bad thing to do? Like, no, we've saved customers millions and millions and millions of dollars through some of these offers by having the flexibility or discounts or things like that for their subscription. And we've saved businesses millions and millions of dollars. So it's a win. It's truly a win-win situation for both parties. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. All right. So you're evolving your target market, but it's more leaning towards the larger enterprise marketplace. Is that where it's heading, you think?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And we're continuing to do some deep product research into where is the most opportunity, both for our business and within the subscription industry as a whole. I'm
Cool.
really excited about brick and mortar because car washes and some like these markets are underserved by technology. So I think there's a really big opportunity to move into some of those markets that are they're a little newer or a little more recent entrance to the subscription business model.
And they're also, a lot of them are very proven and large networks, especially in the United States, aren't they? So big
Yeah.
chains of different retail businesses that could benefit from you helping them.
That's right. Probably not the slushy subscription business, but
No.
have to ask me in a year from now if we've served them yet.
Okay, so the other thing that I'm curious about is you've launched the business, but how did you go and get customers? Was it boots on the ground? Was it an email marketing campaign? Was it paid social? Was there a breakthrough in terms of a few larger customer or something? Tell us, how did you get traction in sales and marketing, and what marketing did you use, or did you use any?
This was a harder one to solve once we knew we had something businesses needed. It was very clear. And we had some early customers when we said, "Hey, we're going to be starting this thing. We're going to do a beta. Are you interested?" And overwhelmingly, we did like a list, an early wait list. And there were like 20 businesses on that wait list. And they almost all came and onboarded to Churnkey. And it was great. But after that, it was just quiet. It was crickets. And
Right.
we said, what is going on here? The things that had worked for our last business, we thought we could just, hey, we exited business. We got this thing all figured out. We're experts now. Let's just do it again. And what we found was that the inbound channels where we do all this inbound work and some viral loops and stuff, while that works for consumer type businesses, does not work for B2B, which is what Churnkey is. We serve other businesses. So
Yep.
very much a sales driven process where I'm on LinkedIn or Twitter and messaging people and recording Loom videos to say, hey, this is your product. We could save you X amount per year. Your customers will be happy. There are all these benefits. Come look at it. And it was a very slow process at first. But I think what's changed recently that's helped us to grow faster. So like, I'd say 2 years ago, that was kind of the motion. It's like very manual, very hard outreach. There's been a lot of awareness that churn is a problem. Churn has become a bigger problem over the last 2 or 3 years. And there are people at organizations whose job that is now to just focus on reducing churn. So we now have like a name for people at organizations we can reach out to directly. It's like, hey, you've got a quota here. Like you've got something you're accountable to. You need this. And we get a lot of inbound now too, just because we've put in the time and paid the dues to build out all this very high level content around retention strategies. So we're really focused on subscription analytics, putting out the content, doing podcasts, doing webinars, it all adds up. So it's been a very long, slow path where we're finally seeing fruits after years of working at it. So yeah, it's a different cadence. This business has much more upside to our last one. And we're there, like we're beyond where the last business was now. And it's kind of like, okay, well, where's the limit? And I think that's the cool thing is, it's like you start from nothing, you lay brick after brick after brick, and eventually you're kind of at a point you're looking at and you're like, okay, well, like, we've got a lot of opportunity left. Like, where do we go next? So it's less of a question of like, where are we going to go get customers? It's like, we know customers are in these different channels. What is the priority?
Yeah.
And that's a pretty cool place to be, but it took a lot to get there.
Yeah. Well, I think the opportunity here is certainly one, well, especially in the digital space, it's usually global, but then Is it something where you can dominate the industry globally? You can maybe want to play in a niche. Where do you see yourself in terms of that? The opportunities for you do seem large because there's so much software as a service subscription models, for example, and then we've got physical retail stores, we've got gyms. So there is certainly a wave of subscription models that are very much part of the business psyche now, is that we've got to go subscription as a service. It basically is part of what we do. So the market, have you identified the size of the market, you think, for you guys?
The global subscription market is $1 trillion a year.
Wow.
It's insane. And that's global. That's across software and brick and mortar. I mean, gyms, everything. So it really is a matter of being very intentional and saying, okay, well, this is the market that's where we're feeling pull. I think that's a big thing in business is you don't want to be pushing things. When you feel like you're having to really push things on your prospects, it's going to be much harder to close deals and have that kind of momentum. So it's identifying, okay, these are the markets that need our product the most desperately. And maybe there's an educational component that you need to work on to get them educated on what you do. Maybe that's going to conferences, that sort of thing. But yeah, like we do have some ideas of next steps. We're still very busy with mostly just software businesses. That's the bulk of our book of business.
Yes.
But we are seeing the pull from brick and mortar. And I love working with those because the businesses are so interesting. You know, if you think about a car wash, it's a fascinating business. And the economics of a subscription for that are really interesting too.
Yeah.
You have different margins, you have different payback period, and we can help with all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, you must come across a whole range of different subscription models and industries, and I'm sure some of them you're going, oh, I didn't know that could be made into a subscription model.
And sometimes it shouldn't be, yes.
And sometimes they shouldn't be, like, yeah, maybe slushies shouldn't be because we're actually just
Definitely
killing
not.
our children and people with sugar through slushies, right?
That's right.
It's like, okay, selling like an addiction product, really, isn't it?
Right. Yeah. A cigarette subscription or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. Well, alcohol addiction. Yeah. So let's do slushies because that's a sugar addiction issue.
That's right.
So are there any industries you're seeing that are emerging, or the ones that are, so software as a service is basically the first it was done.
Mhm.
Any other emerging areas that you that have raised your antenna or you found fascinating?
I think any high volume business that's going to require a lot of work for, typically what do you do if you're a gym and your payments fail? You're going to have to send it to collections. You're going to cancel the membership, send it to collections. You pay, what do you get, like 10 cents on the dollar?
Yeah.
If that, for the debt. And it's better to have something up front that can help you with that.
Yeah.
Or you've got somebody up front at the counter at the gym who's saying, somebody says, I want to cancel my subscription. Well, you got to go in, you got to meet with them. There's all this headache involved, and you're paying for people too. So I think the brick and mortar space is definitely interesting. And then moving up market to larger software businesses is another big opportunity. One trend we've seen since COVID, where everybody went on this hiring spree, they doubled their headcount. And suddenly it's like, oh no, we got to get back to basics and have a cash flow positive business. We got to look at our margins. We've got to be profitable. And suddenly businesses are like, we've got to do more with less people. And a big thing that we help automate is all of the time and tedium that goes into making sure you're collecting revenue from the customers that owe you, and also making sure that people aren't canceling who could still be a customer. So we facilitate and automate all of those transactions. So yeah, a lot of opportunities still out there.
Yeah. It's what I love about businesses being an entrepreneur is the creativity that emerges, and both, and the people I chat to, like yourself, and many others, is that it's a creative endeavor. A lot of people don't see businesses as creative endeavors, but they certainly are. Like, you've got to take an idea, you've got to produce something, and then actually the reality is you then need to sell that something. There's many starving artists, right? And there's many starving entrepreneurs. So look, one of the ones which I've been involved with a company, which is, and I think maybe they didn't coin it, but creative as a service, where videos are created for marketing across social media and are done in an automated way as well. So that's one interesting area, creative as a service.
Mm.
So, but the other thing too is you've got this incredible range of subscription models from $5 a month to thousands of dollars a month, and depending on, and then you've got like Salesforce essentially, as I think is one of the best examples of software as a service that has made a lot of money, and a lot of people have copied as well. So, but then you've got different varieties and hybrids of software as a service and whatever, or creative as a service, where the salespeople are selling it. So it's not like pull out your credit card and buy this. It's basically then goes through the accounts of companies who are buying it, which is maybe $10,000 a month for creative as a service. So have you seen any of those sort of that hybrid big end of town models?
Yeah, that's a really great question. We actually have some customers like that. And usually it's like if somebody's on a contract or if they're paying via wire or ACH, they're not pulling out a credit card. Usually what we find there is that they're more interested in understanding their customer health metrics. So we have some ML systems. We've worked for years building an ML model that can help predict churn or customer happiness. So that's one thing we have that I didn't really mention. It's a nice tool for understanding how's the business trending, how can we forecast growth, retention, that sort of thing. But yeah, and to the point about the business is like Salesforce is actually a good example. We'll keep using that. They've got a lot of customers that are on these tiny plans that are $15 a month, or maybe, don't quote me on pricing, but they have a smaller tier, middle tier, and then like a big enterprise contractual tier that's probably 100K to $1 million a year. So we can serve part of that. So we'd serve like with our cancel flows and payment recovery. There's a big book of business, a really large book of business that we can help automate, because you can't throw a customer success manager on a $15 account.
No,
you just can't do it. So why not have something that's automated rather than nothing at all?
Yeah.
So that's really where we come in with those kinds of customers, is part of the book of business. And then for the larger accounts where it doesn't make sense to have automation because you're paying somebody to manage that account, at least having some kind of customer health suite so you can understand how are these customers feeling.
Yeah, that's really, really good to know, because quite often the cancellations happen and you don't know why. So
Yeah,
you help in that sort of data capture, sentiment, so on, do you?
we do so much around that, and that's really cool. It's one of my favorite parts about the business is that we're able to do really cool topic clustering. So we have businesses that have 100,000 cancel sessions in a 90-day period, just as one example. And we're able to consolidate all that feedback into topics so they can understand, all right, well, the lack of this feature is why a lot of customers are canceling, or this price point for this cohort of customers is too expensive because we got all these customers churning out of it. So it's all kinds of business intelligence that we can enable there too.
Yeah. Wow. Okay, cool. So one final question before I ask the other question that I mentioned at the beginning. How is AI impacting your technology development and business? Are you using it? Is it in the basically development journey that you're looking at? Where are you up to with AI?
Yeah, good question. And they say also that once you're past 35, you're more of a skeptic around new technology than an early adopter. And I definitely sense that transition with the AI boom as I crossed that point a number of years back. With AI, I'm like, is this really going to be as powerful or as impactful as they've been saying for years? And it is. It's pretty mind blowing. We have it built into our products. So even with copywriting and things like that, as somebody is wanting to work on personalizing copy for customers, we can take a lot of different attributes by the customer and personalize the offboarding experience using AI. So it's kind of an augmentation function. And then we have, I mentioned a customer health model where we have machine learning that uses AI to actually help predict customer churn. So that's another interesting facet of the business where AI is starting to make a big difference.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I think it's the application of AI. In other words, and I think the software engineer said it to me recently, said that basically just don't use AI for AI's sake, identify a problem and can AI solve that problem?
That's right.
So obviously it comes down to, can AI scale something that I'm doing manually, for example? Um, and AI is in the middle of a huge development at any rate. So a great book, The Next Wave by Mustafa Sulfiman is actually a really good insight into, I suppose, the future of AI, but in a very practical way, and also the guardrails needed for it. So in terms of advice to people that are listening to this, entrepreneurs, you've been a founder twice now. You did your first one as a side hustle. This obviously is not a side hustle. You generated enough cash on exit to actually fund this. It raises another question quickly before we get into that. Did you go and raise money from venture capitalists to fund uh, Churnkey, or did you just bootstrap it yourselves?
We are mostly bootstrapped. Yeah, we're fortunate to have had an exit, and as you kind of alluded to, we were able to deploy a lot of the proceeds into this business, which is a luxury I'd never had, and it does give you so much more peace of mind and time to build.
Yep.
Just enough time. So yeah, we have taken capital, and it's been a cool position to be in, though, because we didn't desperately need the capital, and that does kind of flip the script when you're raising it.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
have traction, and have bootstrapped to a certain point, then you can get capital on much more favorable terms where you're still in control and calling the shots for your business.
Yeah. In other words, you feel like you've got control and can call the shots, rather than going to a venture capitalist requiring money with a beggar bowl, which is not a good look generally, is it?
Yeah. Well, and it goes back to the heart of entrepreneurship. It's like a lot of times people are entrepreneurs because you don't want to be employed. You don't want to feel like somebody else is pushing you in a direction that you don't want to be going.
Yeah.
And oftentimes, the best case scenario is you find a venture capitalist that's totally aligned on what you want to do.
Yeah.
And everybody's friendly, everybody's happy. That doesn't always work out, as you can imagine. And oftentimes people get forced onto this hamster wheel of like, oh, I've got to raise my seed round. I'm not on track to hit my Series A target. Are we going to run out of money? So it's kind of like the mathematics in venture don't work for most businesses. So when a business is funded, it's like either you're going to 100x or you need to crash and burn in like a year or two trying.
Yep. Yeah. No, it's you're in a very fortunate position because of the hard yards you did on the first business as a founder in a startup. So what are maybe two or three tips you'd offer to founders, startups, those, because you've been playing in the digital business space, which is what fascinates me, is because the digital business space typically allows you to reach the world with your idea and scale it to much bigger than, selling cheese in the local town square. So what are some tips that you would like to share that you think are really important in your what you've learned along the way as founder of two successful startups?
I would say, first and foremost, the market is going to be the provider for ideas, not you. So that's a hard thing because oftentimes you want to build something that's in your head, and you can start and try doing that, but the odds are pretty high that that's not actually what people are willing to pay for. So I think that's a big part of it. Is if you're going to start anything as a business, it needs to be something where there's a market that's willing to pay before you even start building it. And this could be, there's a market that's already established and nobody is doing that business well, or that you could do it better. That's one way. But if you're starting something that's totally novel, it's like you should exercise a lot of caution there, because there are a lot of people in the world. There's probably a good reason somebody hasn't built it yet, particularly if it's a broad idea. So I think that'd be one. It's just like listening to the market before you get sold on an idea that you have. Number two would be, once you're in that mode, you've found something that you think the market wants. It could still probably be something that's not a successful business. So you need to be open to that possibility. And sticking into that initial space you're with is going to give you a lot of power over time. So before the call started being recorded, we were talking about luck. And to what extent does luck play a role in success, either personally or for a business. And I think of luck in terms of surface area. So by giving yourself more time and more reps, more attempts, more conversations with potential customers, you're going to really hone in on specific problems that you could solve. So it may not be the first problem you set out to solve that people are willing to pay for. It may be the third or the fourth, but if you stick with it long enough, the persistence is going to increase the chances that you'll get lucky and find something. So it's really about that balance of, if you stick with something long enough, eventually you're going to find something that people are willing to pay for.
Yeah.
So that would be, I'd say, my top two
Okay.
recommendations. That it's taken me a long time to understand that component and really put it into practice. And if I were starting over again, that would be the first and foremost considerations of something I'm starting.
Yeah. So really what you're saying is that you might have the best idea in the world, but the market's going to tell you what is the best idea in the world.
That's right. Yeah. Is it really a good idea? Well, the market is going to tell you. I mean, it might be a great idea. It's not a great business. You know what I mean? Like it could be whatever idea you have. Well, are you in the business, or is it your goal to just have ideas, or is it your goal to actually make money and have some kind of successful business outcome?
Yeah. And the other one you mentioned is just the endurance required and the persistence required to succeed, because you might find that you got your timing wrong by a year or two, but if you last long enough, you almost stumble into a market that develops around you. This also happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that is fascinating because, a lot of people give up easily or burn a lot of cash, take expensive offices because it's an ego trip, not a business trip. So, yeah. So one other question before I ask the question about what brings you the most joy in life and what would you do for nothing if you weren't being paid? Did you create a minimal viable product first for Churnkey?
Yes, in a way. We were able to build some things that worked from our last business, and then we started it afresh and created roughly the same thing as like its own business and separate platform. And it's a very basic offboarding flow. It still took a long time to build. I think that's the difference in selling to businesses versus consumers. Is you can have just a simple tool, it doesn't have to look pretty. If it solves a real problem for a consumer, that's going to handle it. But for businesses, like, hey, you're connecting to my business. Like this needs to be, there are higher table stakes. So that the minimum viable, product we had was definitely more than what we had at Wavve, but it was still just enough to make sure that this is something the market's going to pay for, and we can kind of iterate and move from there.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because the MVP model, minimal viable product, is certainly tossed around a lot in the industry. And it's true, you don't want to build something. And the issue with building something fully formed is that you're assuming that that's what the customers want. And as you know, the reality is that the market is going to hit you in the face. Like you might have the
Yes.
best idea, like, Steve, Mike Tyson's idea about, everyone has a great plan until they get hit in the face. And that's what the market does to most businesses. So that's the reality.
It really does. It's such a humbling thing too. And you're going to be humbled as an entrepreneur regardless. But I mean, we had that 18-month period of, I can't count the number of hours and costs that went into that business. And we were building something that we thought people wanted rather than building like the most basic version and then talking to customers. So yeah, that's a lesson I will not repeat.
All right, our final question, which I like to ask all my guests, is what brings Nick the most joy and would do it for free, even if you had all the money in the world? What brings you joy, Nick?
I love helping other entrepreneurs. I think that's something I've developed over time, having done it and having been in a situation where I'm just totally trapped financially and figuring it out the hard way, and spent my wheels a lot over a decade getting out of that mess. And it's a common scenario. We see it a lot today. You got loans, you got something stopping you from pursuing that thing that you want. My biggest value in life is really about making steps that move toward freedom. Freedom looks different to everybody.
Yes.
For me,
Yeah.
For me, it means like, oh, I don't have to worry about, how am I going to pay my bills this month?
Yes.
Or next year? Or, where am I going to send my kids to school? Like those kinds of questions where it's like, I've got enough covered here with the business I have, where it's fine. I can focus on other areas or the areas that bring me joy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess that's a kind of roundabout way of answering yours. Things that fulfill you. It's kind of a value centric approach around freedom, and then helping others find that freedom. That brings me a lot of joy.
Yeah, that's great to hear because I think helping other people um, is one of the key factors of happiness, even revealed by Harvard research over about 87 years of study. Is that at the end of the day, it's community and people that make you provide happiness. It's not stuff. And as long as you've got enough money to pay the bills, it takes that stress away. Then you can double down on the relationships that matter. I suppose that's the best way. And so thank you very much, Nick, for sharing your ideas and your journey. I've been fascinated by hearing your journey. It's just it's a dive into being human as well, and also and hats off to you for what you've done. It's a really great story, and I look forward to hearing more about Churnkey. And I've got maybe a couple of people I could introduce you to maybe down the track as well. So we'll chat off air about
Yeah,
that.
that
So
sounds great. Well, thank you for having me, Jeff. This has been a pleasure.
yeah, thank you. It's been an absolute joy for me to actually have a chat with you. Thank you.